All right, what is happening, everybody? We're back. We're doing another race review. The penultimate round of the UCI Downhill World Cup went down on the weekend at Loudenvielle, which is in France. Now, like all classic French races, it decided to piss down rain like it always does. And not just rain continuous, but on and off for the entire weekend. It started off with practice getting cancelled because of the weather. The track was deteriorating day by day or hour by hour. So there was not actually a lot of riding that went down. A lot of riders actually got stopped and weren't allowed to go down for most of the day just so they could do work on the track and make sure that it was up to scratch for obviously qualifying the next day. Even when it went into qualifying, they cancelled the semis and went straight from quali to finals. So the top 30 went through, which kind of caused a little bit of havoc with everyone. You could tell that some riders might not known how hard to push, especially having like super limited runs and then going straight into a qualifier for the finals. So a bit all over the place. The track was super similar to last year. They didn't really make that many changes. They added some berms and stuff where it was off cameras last year, which I think was a lifesaver. I think if they ran the track as it was last year, there would have just been a lot of parts that would have gone straight off. You can even see some of the catches that they did build still were getting blown out, and they obviously had to do work on it continuously through the weekend to make sure everything stayed up to scratch. But it was just one of those tracks where you look at the slow-mos and some of the holes, and there was one video, I think it was Reece jumping off a stall wall, and he lands in these two massive holes, and you see his bike just sink into them. And when a track does start off being that wet and that beat up, and then obviously the sun comes out and dries, they get so rough. Mont Saint Anne is a perfect example of this. You'd always practice in the wet, create all these massive holes, and then it'll dry up. So then you've got the speed, and then you've got obviously these holes and the roughness that comes along with that. So you've really got to maintain your energy levels over the weekend when it's like that because of how beat up obviously the track gets, how physical it becomes for your body. And you've really got to, especially with a track like Loudenvielle where the top is such a big sprint straight out of the gate, like your heart rate blows up straight away. You're already using a ton of energy straight from the get-go. You're pretty much sprinting for the first 30 seconds. And then you've got to maintain that through obviously these steeper bits with massive holes and being slippery and wet. You just ride that little bit tighter as well. So to maintain all of that is definitely a hard thing to do. I think the track there is a proper downhill track for sure. I'd kind of almost compare it to an Andorra, like not the World Champs track that just happened, but the old World Cup track we used to race where the top was a sprint. And then as you get further down, it gets steeper. So it's like you kind of gas yourself out at the top and then you've got to maintain that. And then obviously pump and everything else comes into it. But it's a proper downhill track. It tests your sprinting power. It tests your just like holding speed. It tests your steepness. It tests your bike skill. So add the wet into that as well. And you've got a fair old mixture. And you can see the riders that are very technically savvy, like a Reece Wilson, like a Benoit Coulange, like a Loic Bruni, these riders that can really pick their moments and really, really know how to control their bike no matter what conditions. So it was an interesting race to watch. There was some few wild cards that obviously got thrown in there. I believe obviously the rain played a massive factor. You can see that towards the last guys it started to dry up a bit, but it was in that really bad kind of time frame from where it goes from a river and quite grippy to then goes to like more slippery mud. So I think the last 10, maybe not quite last 10, maybe the last 5 or so definitely got hit with that. It stopped raining halfway through and then obviously started drying up, and the guys at the very end definitely got it the worst. So it's how it goes. Sometimes those guys get lucky, sometimes they don't. But in this instance, they definitely got a bit unlucky. But we'll just run through some of the results first for the women. So Myriam Nicole got the win with a 4:05. Vali Höll got second with a 4:06, 1.1 back, and she wraps up the overall championship with that result. Phoebe Gale got third. I think that's one of her best results, if not her best result. She was 4 seconds back. Nina Hoffman in fourth, 5 seconds back, and Marine Cabarrou was 6 seconds back with a 4:11. all the girls laid it down. It's interesting to see how Myriam Nicole's just come back and just right back at the top there. Obviously, she's had a little bit of a struggle over the last few years with injuries and stuff like that. now she's back, finding her feet, getting her consistency back, and just whenever it becomes a track like this where it's technical, it's hard, it's fast, it's all of those things, she is definitely one of the best bike riders in the world and can just lay it down. I'm not sure what's going on with Marin at the moment. She seems to be a bit up and down. She obviously won a World Cup this year, but now has been kind of thereabouts, like top 5 consistently, but just like not that winning pace I think we know she has. Cool to see Phoebe Gale up there with a good ride, and just I think building the confidence. Obviously her and Tahnee ride together a lot, and Tahnee steals a lot of the spotlight, which is completely fair. She's obviously been up there longer, but it's going to be interesting to see how Phoebe kind of attaches to her and then also breaks away and starts kind of making her own path with obviously getting these podiums, getting this consistency, and how that's going to go into the future. But Tahnee was actually fastest the first split and then I believe had a crash, so she ended up out the back, but she's definitely got the speed as well. I've been quite impressed with her, just the consistent results, even if it might not be in finals, but in qualifying and time training and everything like that, she has just found that speed and can be more consistent, and seems like she's enjoying it more as well. So no, it's cool to see. In the men's, Benoit Coulange, the man, the myth, the legend, laid one down, and watching his run, you can really notice those people that just commit that just little bit more into a corner or into a slippery off camber, how much of a benefit that creates further down the track. Like you can just see it in like one corner. Like for example, if you go back and watch the replay, there's a steep chute, probably the steepest bit on the track, and he just rails out of that, and just for that next camber has even more speed than pretty much anyone else. So I think those little things the whole way down is what got him the win. And he's just one of those guys. He's got such long legs, such long arms. Just in those wet conditions, he can move around the bike so much. He can stay loose, and he can absolutely throw down a run. But I think everyone's ride of the day would have to go to Reece Wilson. Now coming back after head injuries, after so much time off the bike, away from World Cups, you doubt yourself, you question yourself, you don't understand why everything is going the way it's going and why you kind of can't catch a break. So to finally come back and get second in the world, 2.2 seconds off the win. I do believe his conditions were slightly worse than Benoit's as well. I think the track did dry up a little bit for him, so I reckon he could have even been even closer. Seemed like he lost time at the top where the track could have been rolling a bit slower without that extra bit of water on the track. But I think he'd have to be over the moon after seeing his teammate Loris become world champion last week, and then also the struggle of like where he's come from. Like you can see the emotion in the photos and videos that came out of that race weekend and when he got onto the podium. So couldn't be happier for Rico, and couldn't be happier for seeing him like get his momentum building again. It was last time he won a World Cup was 2021, and literally ever since then it's been a struggle to get back. So it's so good to see. I couldn't be happier for someone. So Reece Wilson in second. Andreas Kobe was in third, 2.7 back. Now, he is someone that you're just waiting. You're waiting for that win. You're waiting for that really good result. He's always thereabouts. He struggled a bit more this year than I think we thought he would, even though he obviously comes and has these breakthrough rides where he gets a podium, he almost gets a win. But I think we got so used to him, the consistency that he had over last year, where it was just podium, that becomes your baseline normal for a rider. And when they step out of that, even though they're not getting bad results, it's still like a bit of a shock. But he was in third. Luke Bruni, he got fourth, which wrapped him up the World Cup title for this year. He didn't even know until he was actually getting interviewed on the podium afterwards that he won the overall, which was kind of, I guess it's good going into a race not thinking about that. Like it doesn't really matter. You just go your best, see how it all pans out. I've been super impressed with how he's been riding, especially in the wet. He always kind of said that he wasn't a wet rider, but now he can get those consistent results. He was the last man down. The track was arguably the worst it could have been, and he still was the fastest at the first two splits and then dropped back a little bit. There was a guy yelling at him about halfway down. You can see in the feed. I don't know if he was saying where he was at and whether he needed to like tame it in to get the overall. I'm not sure exactly what was said, but felt like he tamed it down a little bit at the bottom, nursed it down, got it down, and got the overall. So yeah, interesting to see. That's the consistency of Luke again, just being able to back it up every weekend. I think that's the big defining factor from him and other races. Like I think Marie, for all that speed, is a faster bike rider, but I think Loic is a much better racer than anyone else on the circuit. So I think this comes down to consistency beats speed, and consistency wins championships. Speed is great, but at the end of the day, you can look at someone like Sam Hill was the fastest mountain biker in the world for years, but then Greg has won more races. So for all out speed, even when you look at people like Aaron, well, Aaron kind of had both. Aaron was just fast and consistent. He kind of nailed everything. But I think Sam would go really fast at a race and then crash at the next, and then go really fast at a race and then not do the best. The consistency wasn't there. Where Loic's got the consistency, Amaury has more of the all-out speed. Amaury actually went down. I think he was maybe fastest at the first split, just in front of Loic, and then crashed in a corner. One interesting thing I saw, though, was when he crashed, he was struggling to get up, but he was struggling to get up because he didn't take his hands off his handlebars. He didn't take his hands off his grips, which super fascinating, because as soon as you take your hands off the grips and you touch the mud, you just got a moto throttle. You're never going to be able to hang on after that. So he was conscious enough to leave his hands on the bars, try and kind of turtle his way back up, get up and go. Now, he lost some time. I think he still ended up like 10th or something. So still got a good result considering a crash. But that was a massive takeaway. Whenever you're crashing in the wet, don't put your hands in the mud. Just kind of elbow your way back up and keep your hands dry so you're not doing the moto grips. Ronan Dunn, super impressive. He actually had a crash. He was 3.6 back, but he crashed at the top and still in 5th place. He was someone that definitely could have been fighting for the win, or at least a 2nd place. Like, he didn't lose a lot of time with the crash, but he still crashed. It's still in your head. You still got to get over that idea that I've just been on the ground and now I've got to go back to doing my thing. So he's impressed me as well. I think he's 3rd in the overall, which is amazing to be like, new team. You're on Red Bull. You're this out there rider that always throws everything at it, but he's had that consistency. He's had those good results. He can still crash and still get on the podium. So massive from him. O'Sheen, Kellingham, he was 6th. He's just a wet mud rider, just wizard. So that was good to see. Remy Tiron, another wet rider wizard. Thomas the Stack, Charlie Hatton, Amaury Piron, Laurie Greenland, Danny Hart, Angel, I can't even say his last name. Loris Vergier, Greg Minard, Don Platt. So Alonso. So you see all those guys, and this is my big takeaway. So with like Remy, with O'Sheen, with Charlie Hatton, with Laurie, with Danny, all these guys you say are wet weather riders. And I was thinking about this today, where it's not even the fact that you do ride in the wet all the time, or you get said that you're a wet weather rider. It's just the mindset going into races like this. Like when it's raining, like you look at Reece and he was happy. It's like if you can shift your mindset to go into something and be happy that it's happening because you can't control it, you're going to get a better outcome. So seeing people wanting it to rain, like I never wanted it to rain, but if it did, if you could just be happy with that and actually enjoy the fact that you're like, well, this is what we're going to do, let's do it, you will get a better result back from that. Now, this is a tricky thing to do, because if you obviously know you're going to do better in the dry, you're going to be wanting it to be dry. But if you take your emotion and control out of it and go, whatever is going to be, and I'm going to be happy either way, you will get a better result. So I think a lot of those riders, just knowing that when it does rain, that they can still perform at the highest level, is going to give them such an advantage over everyone else that is just down in the dumps, don't want to put the rain jacket on, don't want to go up and roll around in the rain, don't want to get in the mud, it's all these things, it's these negatives that you build on and build on and build on, and then it just ruins your whole weekend. Where if you can just go out and have fun and have a smile, and what happens, happens. If you crash, you crash. If you don't, you don't. Just enjoy it. But I do know from personal experience, it's hard to put yourself in that mindset when it is pissing down rain, when your bike is covered in mud, when the track is deteriorating, when you don't get your practice runs, when they cancel qualifying. It's like all these influences over your weekend that are trying to get you down. And you see these athletes that are super mentally strong that just go, that's fine. I'll still be okay. I'll still do the thing. I'll get my practice in. It doesn't matter. It's like, focus on what you can control and shut out everything else as noise so you can focus on your goal and achieving your goal. And I think people like Reese, like Remy Tyrion, like even Bernard Kerr, for example, Charlie Hatton, Benoit Coulange, all these guys, Luke Bruni, like they just enjoy the process of riding their bike, whether it be dry or wet. And because of that, they get the best result out of it. So, yeah. Also, to finish it off, want to know, because I saw a lot of comments about this in the pink bike section, when Finn Isles was coming down, or was it Tahnee coming down? One or the other, but they were cutting back in Finn's run to Tahnee, or when Tahnee was coming down to Finn. I think you should just leave people's personal lives alone. Like, you don't need to build this weird storyline that if some people are seeing each other in the scene, it doesn't matter. That doesn't change anything. You're trying to get clicks off other people's personal life, and you're trying to make this thing into something that it's kind of not. So I didn't actually see it, or I've missed it, but I've seen a lot of comments surrounding it. So I'd like to figure out what you guys thought of that, or whether they should try and go more to this whole like drive to survive thing with F1, where they get more personalized with it. But I think it's just at this point where it's not at that point where you've got film crews following people around and getting that in depth into teams, which I think would be better. But film your team manager, film your mechanic, film that. But I don't know, it's tricky. I think eventually you might be able to go down that path, but I just feel like, especially in a race run, you don't need to be cutting back to the person you're talking to or have like a romantic connection with. I'm like, that just gets a bit messy and weird, and I don't know. I'm not here for it, but I don't know. You guys might have liked that excitement or added dynamic to the broadcast, but interesting to hear what you guys think. Also interested to hear about what you guys are thinking for Snowshoe, with who's your pick to throw down, and what has been the best and worst thing about the World Cup circuit this year with the changes and everything that's happened, and what has made you really excited about it, and what has been like, and have you been watching it as much as you would in the past? Really interested to hear this stuff. Always look at the comments. Don't always reply, but I always see them, always like them. I'm going to try and be more on top of them for this one, and get the community built. But yeah, we chatted for 17 minutes. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you soon.